So, what we're going to talk about today is how signaling can change cellular behavior. And this is something that oftentimes we learn about in introductory biology courses, but then we forget that this is going to happen in any of these eukaryotic cells. And these eukaryotic cells build up our bodies, and our bodies are going to be responding to all sorts of signals at the cellular level all of the time. So, how are some of the biggest ways that this happens? And we won't be talking through all the different pathways, but I wanted to give you just a little bit of a reminder of how this takes place. Okay, so if we're looking at our cell, right, we've got our plasma membrane, okay, and our plasma membrane has its phospholipid bilayer, and then it'll also have many proteins on it. Right, so we've talked about how we have different types of proteins, and these different proteins oftentimes have the ability to respond to a signal, right? So we'll have our little molecule. Okay, we've got a little signaling molecule. And so what happens is, let's say this is a hormone. And this hormone binds to one of the proteins on the surface of the plasma membrane. And that protein is going to respond in a number of ways. Typically, something will happen where the protein will change shapes. So if it changes shapes, we call that a conformational change. But sometimes all it does is it makes it more, and oftentimes with these changes, it makes it easier for a certain reaction to take place, right? So we can have things like an enzymatic reaction take place. We can have other enzymes that happen in that protein, or that protein is changes shape in such a way that other enzymes that are associated with it can have a reaction. But let's just say a reaction takes place. So a little reaction takes place. And now we'll have what's referred to as a secondary messenger. So there's something that can send and these secondary messengers are usually some smaller molecule, okay? So something like calcium or cyclic AMP that are small, but they are major players in different enzymatic reactions. So these secondary messengers are going to activate proteins. Sometimes they'll also be able to inactivate proteins. But let's focus on the activating proteins for now. When it activates a protein, there'll be a series of reactions that take place, and as they take place, eventually they're going to get down to a special series of proteins that we refer to as transcription factors. These transcription factors will then go into the nucleus and bind to the DNA to activate gene expression. When it activates gene expression, now we're going to have more proteins of a particular type. These proteins can be essential for different functions that the cell may need, right? So it kind of depends on what we're doing, right? So let's say this was a hormone that turned on cellular metabolism. We're going to increase proteins and enzymes that help with cellular metabolism. Whatever it is that the cell needs in response to that specific pathway takes place. Now, I wanted to finish on one kind of important note, and that is that this isn't a one-to-one process. So it's not like you have one signaling molecule that turns on one protein, which turns on one secondary messenger. As long as this reaction is happening, right, this reaction here, we're going to be making more and more and more of these secondary messengers. And these secondary messengers are going to be activating more and more and more proteins. And then this will be activating more and more and more transcription factors. You see what I'm saying? We refer to this as signal amplification. And so this is why something as small as just a little bit of a change in the amount of hormones in your bloodstream or the amount of electrolytes in your diet can cause such a major difference in your body, is because if you have too much or too little, you're either going to have way too much of this particular signaling pathway or not nearly enough. And so that's where some things can go wrong in the body in response to these signaling pathways.